Hi there, so in this video I'm going to show you how to do what I call the peacock stitch, and this is a bracelet that I've made with this stitch, and it happens because we're doing all of the rows of the motif into one row, into the first row, and that's how it gets all linked together, and that expands all the V stitches and things, and that makes these beautiful peacock stitches that everyone loves. And I haven't seen this anywhere online, so I presume it's my own design. So this one, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches to make the peacock motif, and then it has a single plain stitch row in between to break it up. This one here has 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches, but there's no break in between, so they all kind of merge together, but it still looks really cool. Now the thing about this is that it's very, very solid and very difficult to reduce. So this one here hasn't been reduced at all, so that's the size of the needle that you work on, so bear that in mind. This one here, because it's got less stitches, it can be reduced, but I wouldn't pull it through a draw plate. I would use a little hammer like this, and so you would just very gently turn your work and tap it until it reduces. You can already see this one's starting to reduce. So at this end it's getting a little bit more reduced than this end. But yeah, so you can squish it with your hands if you've got the brute strength, but yeah, better on your hands to use a hammer to reduce this kind of work. So I have already got one started here, so we'll zoom in a little bit. So this stitch, there's six rows to the motif, and then a plain row in between, just like this one here with the copper wire. So this is just some aluminium wire, and then I've got 2 plain rows to start the next one, because the second row is the start of another motif. And what I'm going to do is use some pink wire so that you can see the difference, see what it's like to start a motif. So when you fully start this from the beginning, you need to have 2 rows of plain stitch. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to pull that off, and we're going to join in a new piece of wire. Okay, so we've got that new piece of wire, and I've got a very long piece of wire for this, because these motifs, they take quite a few rows, 6 or 7 rows, and that's a lot of wire to use. So I've got a full length of wire, and now we're going to start the pattern. So the pattern starts with that V there, the bottom V that I've got here. So we've got a plain row, and then we're starting the motif here. So you've got the 2 rows, this one here. So we don't go into this one like a normal plain stitch, we go up to, like we're doing a double stitch, and we go through here. And bear in mind that we need to keep these gaps relatively even, otherwise the shape will get distorted. So up to, this is 26 gauge aluminium wire, in case I didn't say that. So we're going up to just to start off the pattern. Now the thing about this is that we're going around the V that we've already got there from the previous row. We don't want to pull too tight and go across, because then you won't be able to see the pattern very well and it'll look quite messy. So just take your time, and we're going through that second row to start off. Try not to kink your wire, because that will mess things up. Alright, we're back to where we joint the wire on. So we're still going through that second row there. Now, all of these rows all of the rows that we're doing are going through that same row. So the new wire doesn't really get secured in super well. So what we will do is we cut it down here, and then that's how many rows it'll be behind. You can give it a little twist, just get some pliers just to help it stay there, and nothing will happen to it, hopefully. Okay, so now the second row of the pattern, we are now going up 3. So 1, 2, 3. So that's the same row as the previous one, but because we've already done one row, it's now up 3 instead of 2. Once you've done this for a while, you'll get used to where the stitching is. Keeping it nice and even. And make sure you use a nice soft wire for this. So if it's used half hard on the packet, steer clear of it. You'll be making too much work for yourself. Okay, almost back at the beginning, past this joining in row. And now we're at the start, so we're still going through that row there, so we now are up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll just finish this row and then you'll see what it looks like. Okay, so we're back at the beginning and we're still going through that first row there because we're doing 6 rows and then a plain row. So that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. So this is the last one, I think. Yep, it looks like it. You kind of get a feel for how it looks, so there's a nice peacock shape now. And you may feel that it feels quite like it might mess up if you pull on it, but this actually is quite stable once we get to the last row, the last plain row. It does stabilize quite nicely, rather than having, like, see all these big swooping bits of wire. They do get tamed down and pulled down with the last row. So keeping it nice and loose, keeping the loops to the sides of those V's to keep that pattern nicely. There we go. And now we are finished one motif. So now what we do to really finish it off is we do one plain row of stitches. So we go right to the bottom and we do a nice finishing off row of stitches. You can skip this if you want to blend them all together, which I have done. And this bead here. So what you do if you don't want to do a plain row is you go up 2 instead of up 1, and that secures it all in nicely. I also recommend changing the wire at the end of each motif. So in this row here, so at the end of this row I would cut it off and then add a new piece of wire, because the wire can get quite kinked going through all of these all of the big loopy stitches, but also you don't want it to be changing wire in between, like in the middle of a motif, because it'll be very noticeable. especially for me, who's a bit of a perfectionist. So we don't want that. We want it to look nice. So that last little loop there gets secured around the wire that we cut off when we joint it. So now we can keep this line here as the line that we join. So what I would do now is cut this off and we'll join another piece in. So that is it. So because I don't know if I'll finish this off, what we can do, because this is quite nice and soft being aluminium wire, you can very softly reduce it with your fingers, because it's a 26 gauge, so it's quite fine. And that is how the beautiful peacock stitch will look. Isn't that gorgeous? Okay, thank you very much for watching my video, and if you want to see any others, just stick around.